Welcome to Watches Tonight. I am your host, Tim Masso. This evening on Watches Tonight, we've got a lot coming up. It is a variety show. It's a little bit like Pink Lady and Jeff, if you were around in the 1970s. We've got watches to never buy, why we need pre-scratched watches from the factory, fine finish in detail, and I do mean in detail. Plus, we're chatting live, and I share your wrist shots right here on Watches Tonight. Let's see who's in the box. We've got Edward from Sweden. We have Mr. Two Watch. We have Arto Charles from New York City, Soma R from Europe, Enrique Cassiano, Joe Tyson from Apex, North Carolina. We got a friend from Liverpool, Mr. Booney, and Eric R from Southern Utah, Jim Millett of the UK, Moto Gunner from Athens, Georgia. Rick on Watches is in the box with Dr. Kevin Moore, Junior Johnson, Thomas Burnett, G Mood, Calvin D, and we got Omega Jason from Pleasanton, California. Mark S, this time it appears from Colorado. All right, I think that's a different Mark S. Welcome to one and all. Thanks for joining in, Vincent. Thanks for staying up late in Geneva with us. So, while we're warming up, check out the Nixie clock, guys. It's finally set correctly. It's actually working. It took only 20 tries, spread out over 4 years to make this thing work. On, off, reset, update the app, everything. We tried everything. I was about to re-plug it. Just plug it in at the time of day it defaults to. The phone finally interfaced with the thing, and it is set to the correct time. Anybody who unplugs this here will die. Now, a little bit about my Instagram. Well, you may have seen the 1-minute reviews, but there's also a lot of insight into the world of Tim Masso. For instance, I highlighted the functional Nixie clock because it was that big a milestone. We're also doing Wow, the weight of watches, a feature where I literally just put a watch on a scale and you see a number. All of that and more on my Instagram, Tim_Masso. Richard Combs from South Florida, Junior Johnson, Miroslav. We've got a friend from the Bay Area. We got Patrick Suze, Zach S. from Sarasota. I used to have a cousin who lived in Sarasota. And we got Calvin saying, all hail the Nixie clock. Indeed, thank Dalibor Farney for its magnificence. It is an incredible machine when it's perfectly set. When it's not, it's still very entertaining. But for now, it's a genuine timekeeper, and that's been a rarity this last half decade in the office. Viewer wrist shots number 1. Okay, this is an extravaganza. Tack is at the Ripon Races in North Yorkshire with his Gerard Paragot Laureato skeleton. Ryan M. of Toronto rolls with his BMW X7 and AP Royal Oak Jumbo. It's a 15202 second series. Mark A. is in Barcelona with his Patek Philippe Aquanaut Travel Time 5164A. Neil B. takes his Patek Philippe 5396R annual calendar for a spin in the Bentley. We've got Sharath S. who tours Tsukayu Onsen, Japan with his Patek Philippe 5059 Officer's Watch Perpetual Calendar Retrograde. Richard C., he's in the chat box. Now he is on your screen, rolling in his Aston Martin Vantage F1 with the yellow gold Rolex Daytona Rainbow. Jeff S., who's undoubtedly watching because he's a loyal supporter. Yep, there you are. We have Jeff S. saying, we get some Tim French tonight. I'm going to do my best. But you can see Jeff S. does not compromise. French, German, a little bit of everything in his watch box, but these are the ones he's taking for, are you ready for this? A 2-week trip. Okay, he does not travel light. Spencer K. of Pennsylvania, he watches me with his Grunefeld 1941 Principia. Ben L. designed this graphic for his JLC, he's a designer, and the factory engraved his Reverso. He's rolling in his Rivian R1T electric truck. A friend pairs watches and wheels with the Audi RS3 and Patek Philippe 5140 Perpetual Calendar. Here is the entire car, since I know you want to see it, and yeah, I am jealous of all the car fun you guys are having. Send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at the1916company.com to see your passion in this fashion. We got Cab T from Brussels on the screen, staying up late in Europe. We got Carrie B from North Florida, Mike B from Central Florida. We got the whole state of Florida here. We got Kevin joining in from Buffalo in upstate New York. And we got Sashi joining in from Barcelona, brave wearing a, he's saying brave wearing a Patek in Barcelona. I've been hearing horror stories. Barcelona too? I'm so sorry to hear that. We knew London, we knew Paris. I'm sorry to hear that Barcelona has descended into comparable madness. Oddly enough, I've been to New York many times in the last 2 years. I've found no problems at all. Maybe I've just been lucky. Grandmaster chimes in the box from San Francisco, Glenn Thayer, running the show on my phone for chat and the show on my 50-inch TV. Christopher H. in the box with PT and Slow Boy Fuel Pump. Nicholas, welcome. Okay, so never buy these watches. No, I'm not about to trash your favorite or least favorite brand of watch. There are plenty of other YouTube channels for that. Okay, let me back up a little bit. This is a different kind of never buy. Think of it this way. Protection dogs are the hot new thing in celebrity home security. Your watch might get stolen in London or Barcelona, but also during a home invasion. But I'm trying to protect you from yourself. So for that, there's Squash, who's all the security you need. He's a bad watchdog. So logically, he's going to protect you from bad watches because he's a bad watchdog. Now, never buy the cheapest one. This is where Squash wants you to start. Okay, here's the thing. The cheapest one, there's a reason it's the cheapest. Whether it's eBay or Chrono24 or some obscure web forum, the bottom of the barrel will always be the bottom of the barrel, and nothing good can come of that. It's probably a basket case in some sense. Just like this watch, available in parts, significant discount, not worth the money saved. Bad condition, excessive polishing, sometimes a theft history or missing parts. Do you see one of the hands rattling around on the dial in the photos taken by the dealer? Avoid. Also, it's very possible that a crime is at hand. You really need to think about this. Thieves want to move metal fast. And the quicker they can unload stolen goods, the better. And the prices tend to reflect that. They don't want to hold on to hot merchandise. Get out of town prices allow the thieves to get out of town. It's also very common with counterfeits to offer a price that's too good to be true so you can quickly move the metal, delete your account, and move on. I find that this category of pitfall often follows collectors through their career, trying to find the cheapest watch available on the internet of a certain type. So early on, you're looking for bargains on entry-level or popular brands. You're looking for Oris, you're looking for Seiko, you're looking for Fortis, you're looking for Tissot, you're looking maybe for Tag Heuer if it's a step up, but you're always looking for the cheapest one. Later on, you graduate to Royal Oaks, Nautilus 5711s, and even Dotographs, and you keep using the sort tool on Chrono24 to find the absolute cheapest Royal Oak 15202 Jumbo listed on some Eastern European fly-by-night site featuring a stock photograph of something they don't actually have. So, my advice, and Squash's advice, would be to avoid that type of sorting. Note that I haven't actually selected, so if you're selling one of those watches, I'm not saying it's the cheapest. Just that is a sorting option and too many people use it as a default. Start with the expensive one and then work your way down about halfway. That's typically how you sort watches and get a fair deal on Chrono or any platform. Now, you may have also noticed that a lot of the cheapest watches advertised online are actually with Japanese retailers and the listings are in kanji. Right now, if you're in the US, import duties on these things are arcane and often at the mercy of how the shipment is declared, whether US Customs takes a closer look at this, who in Customs is reading the impenetrable and allegedly homogenized tariff schedule, and how well they understand the watch. And by the way, tariffs could be a concern these days, depending on the value. There's usually a de minimis value, something like $800, under which there will be no kind of duty necessary. But keep this in mind if you're looking at very, very expensive watches and one on a Japanese exchange costs thousands less. Regardless of where you are in the world, there are always duties of some kind. And while everyone in the US is talking about tariffs right now, there have traditionally been other charges that need to be paid. So if some $25,000 watch is in Tokyo and the same watch for $26,000 is in Geneva or Miami, sometimes the cheapest watch is not truly the cheapest watch. There's always a price to be paid, and whenever borders are crossed, there's also potentially fees, penalties, and some sort of sanction, especially if you're trying to bring a watch undeclared into Germany, God help you. So Keep that in mind. Even for watches that were originally made in Switzerland or Germany, if they're being exported from a third country into the United States these days, tariff schedules may apply. So keep that in mind, especially when the value is high. Okay, Trap Vision 3D. Good evening, watch people. Miroslav saying, Japanese vendors always declare true value of parcels. I have lots of experience with them. Important to know these days because it's very tempting to click buy. Get that watch. They're more than happy to do business with the United States. They're very familiar with that. But if there are extra fees to be paid, it could be catastrophic at the point of entry. And even if a movement has 17 jewels or more, some ridiculous thing they can look up on Wikipedia, you could be in for a very stiff customs duty at the border. I've seen it happen. And the tariff schedule really does specify jewel count. I read it so you don't have to. Now, the badly photographed watch. This is always a disaster waiting to happen. It's either a scam or it's seller incompetence. Who knows, but it's going to be one of these. Because in an era when any phone can take a photo like this, and that is a photo I took with a phone, there's no excuse for badly photographed luxury goods costing thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. If you can take a picture this good, this close, this easily, and yet you can't see whether the watch has been absolutely bastardized by damage and bad watchmaking, avoid. Again, this is one of those times when people get tempted by astroturfed good reviews created by the seller and his buddies, or a price that's too good to be true, or terms that seem too good to be true. When you can't see the watch accurately, it goes without saying you don't know what you're getting. You're sending the money blind and you're setting yourself up to be scammed. It's almost always the case that the person is just so incompetent he has no business selling anything other than homemade pottery, or this is some sort of criminal enterprise and there's something they don't want you to see. If the person is too daft to steady up and shoot the watch in a decent light, that person isn't fit to advertise luxury-priced goods. You see the same thing with jewelry, you see the same thing with coins, you see the same thing with antiques, even handbags. Just say no. Even the squash stays long enough to take a decent photo. And he is a little jumping bean burrito of a dog. He doesn't stay still that often. And yet look how easily he's photographed. The watch, which doesn't move, should be far easier. Anything less, hit the brakes. By the way, that was my old Master Ultra Thin 34. Can we go back to that picture? If we can. Yeah, guys, what do those two things have in common? The people on my Facebook group couldn't figure it out, and I'm very disappointed in them. Let me know in the chat box, and I'll acknowledge you. Come on, guys, this should be easy. All right. Now, I would also say this. Skip the naked one. The watch that's just a watch on a platform or a piece of paper or a poster or a chopping block, that watch that's being sold by itself usually has a bad story behind it. It's been mistreated. It was bought by someone who was too indifferent to the box papers and accessories to get them when he bought this thing duty-free in the islands. The watch was turned in at a swap shop or a pawn shop or some sort of, I don't know, Goodwill or something like that. And yes, I have seen watches in Goodwill. But if you just see the naked watch and you're tempted to just buy the naked watch, I advise you to look one step ahead. And by the way, I don't mean to besmirch the naked watchmaker. He's great, and that's a wonderful site, and you should visit it. No. Naked watches without boxes and papers fall into the same temptation category as the lowest priced watches of their kind. You pay less up front, but you also get less and you lose on the back end. Many collectors are tempted by the deal, but later feel like they cheated themselves. Even if the seller is ethical, getting the watch incomplete often leaves you feeling unfulfilled with remorse and regrets. Resale and collectability, which by the way are not the same thing, we'll talk about that another time, but they both suffer. Often this is an offense we commit against ourselves. Most sellers offering watches without sets are open and clear about that. They're not trying to scam you, but the proposition that you're getting a cheap watch only seems exciting before you get the thing in the mail. A lack of patience to save more or to find a better example, spending a little bit more time. Guys, we get the best of ourselves here. You learn with experience not to make these compromises. This feels more and more like a bad Carfax situation. Like I feel like this is changing in the watch industry. You know, with Carfax, where the car will never ever be looked at the same because of forever documented damage, the watch itself in a naked sale might be fine, but it will never be complete again, and collectors are starting to look at this as a truly stigmatized watch. The same way people who buy cars, especially enthusiast cars, would stay away from a Porsche 911 that's 2024 with 500 miles but has a Carfax for significant damage or even just some paint work. Guys, think it through before you buy a naked watch. Okay, now there's another concern here, and it's black markets again. A lot of people confuse gray markets and black markets, so let me be clear. Used watches are the aftermarket. Gray market is generally something like Joma Shop, where a dealer had surplus inventory, sold it new in box out the back door to a third-party non-authorized dealer, and then you buy it no longer new but unused from the gray market dealer. That's the gray market. The black market is counterfeit and stolen. So that's what the black market is. And a lot of times stolen watches are sold naked because that's how they're stolen. Very few thieves break into a house and walk out the door with a box full of Audemars Piguet box and paper sets. It's simply not practical. They wouldn't know what they look like, and they don't stick around long enough to look. Counterfeit watches also generally appear naked. Well, it's not unheard of, and I've seen counterfeit watches with boxed sets. It's still less common. It's always easier to counterfeit a watch and sell it quickly at the lowest possible price and naked. So those are always two big flags to look at. Vintage, though, is one instance, and I have to emphasize this, where we make an exception to the rule, because before the era of explicitly luxury watches, let's say post-1985, it was never assumed that you were supposed to keep all the papers and the box with your Rolex 6202 or your 5510 or your 6239. It just was not a thing back then. So originality of the watch, condition of the watch, and provenance of the watch are going to be king there. And if it has a boxed set and it's a 60-year-old Submariner, well, God bless the seller, he's going to get money. But it's not expected in vintage. There are other priorities there. Just keep in mind, late model watches, I don't like them naked. Let's see what's going on in the box here. Lloyd Kerr saying, Tim's right here. I spent almost $200 on a Doxa naked, so I have a Doxa I bought a few years ago. Okay, not naked, but $200 on a Doxa. And right here we have Spring Drive saying, naked watch with no case, laugh out loud. And then we have Jonathan B. 1916 Company has some naked watches. Do they feel somehow different? Well, there are some differences there. I would say of the watches we have, I prefer the ones that are box and paper. I'm not saying don't buy it, because one of the concerns you might have that it's counterfeit or stolen, on our website that's no longer a concern. And we give you a 7-day, no questions asked, right of return. So if you don't like it or you have second thoughts, you can send it back. Most online sellers aren't going to give you that, by the way. Only the best here at the 1916 Company. It's allergy season. But yeah, the ability to get the watch, look at it, wear it for a week, and send it back with absolute guarantee of authenticity and a 2-year warranty, that is one thing that makes our naked watches a little bit different. And by the way, if it's like a vintage Rolex or Patek, that's a little bit different too. We now only sell certified pre-owned Rolex, which by definition comes authenticated by Rolex with the new box and paper set that Rolex puts together for the CPOs. But again, I prefer watches full box and paper. That's just the kind of collector I am, even here. So what else is going on right here? Moto Gunner saying never buy naked. We got Steve 1010. Greetings, Tim. Thanks for the great information. It's always a perspective from me. I never want to have any hard and fast rules. Jim Millett saying great to see you. Sean Hansen in the chat. He's one of our Facebook supporters, and I'm always glad to see him in the chat. Christopher F. Hi, Tim. Why pin buckles when you could make it a clasp? A lot of reasons. Sometimes that lowers the retail price of the watch. For JLC, when they were trying to lower the price of the Duomet without going steel, first they got rid of the folding clasps. And sometimes companies will charge the same money and go with a pin buckle so that they can make a bigger profit while selling you less watch. Every once in a while, a pin buckle feels a little bit organic, and I would say that's most pronounced with a dive watch, where you might have to make a lot of on-the-fly changes to the fit, and it makes more sense to have a pin buckle and a strap. But in those cases, I actually prefer Velcro. We have Amit saying, Tim, I want to say you are awesome. Thank you. And you also have the Bet collector conversations. Always look forward to them. More coming, and some very cool ones too. Rest assured that what's in the pipeline will be very neat, and I think you'll like them. Caliber YQG in the box. Jeff S. saying, my Parmigiani Fleurier Toric Retropont has a pin buckle. Michel Parmigiani said it's because you could see the movement better. True, but unless you put one of those fixing screws in a folding clasp, you can always just pull the strap out of the clasp. So, I don't know. I'm calling bullshit on that one. Okay, viewer wrist shots number 2. Josh P. of Southern Ontario prepares for an off-road bike ride with his Cervelo and Rolex Sea Dweller. Bold man, riding with a watch. Kevin W. of England captures his Zenith Pilot Type 20 against an Airbus A340 turbofan blade. We've got Mark D. who inaugurates watches and waves with his Rolex Submariner and Sea-Doo off Miami. Abdullah of Germany catches watches tonight with the Elite Mango Diver and his Tissot Citadel S. And we've got Kikande M, who hikes in the hills outside Nairobi, Kenya, in the morning mist with his Omega Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch. Very cool, guys. Keep sending those wrist shots to MondayMailbag at the1916company.com to see your pieces on my pixels. Guys, we're at 277 viewers already. Please stay with me. Keep me streaming. Go to the fridge. Go to the bathroom. Go yell at the kids. I don't care. Help them with math. Whatever it takes. Just keep this thing streaming so I can hit 300 concurrent. All right. We have Time Hill saying, good to see you, Thomas Burnett and Caliber YQG. I love it when our regulars in the box know and acknowledge each other. We got Mason One saying, when I bought my nav timer, it was box and warranty card. I took it to eBay to turn it into a full set. Every once in a while you can do that. Warranty cards or certificate of origin, very difficult to regain those. And Patek, for instance, will never reissue a certificate of origin. But if it's just a box or a user's manual or a service network guide, a lot of times you can rebuild that online. But the warranty card, especially if it's some sort of proprietary thing that's not filled out by the dealer, no way. MJ Carroll joining in from the Jersey Shore. We got a question, Tim, what are the best finished Panerai movements? And to that, I would answer probably the Minerva chronograph calibers. So that's the easy answer, and I think I'm going to stick with that one. Maybe the old PAM 21 Rolex 618 Côte d'Ivoire pocket watch movement was decorated nicely for that application, though historically it wouldn't have been. But that's my answer right there. Grandmaster Chime saying, pug love to you and Squash. I agree. Squash is the mascot of our Talking Time with Tim Masso Facebook group. So if you want to see more of him, definitely join the group. And we just hit 300. BWV478 announces it. It is thus official. Okay. The time for factory scratched watches has arrived. And you got to follow me here because this is a little bit silly, but I actually think there's a space for this. Let's go back to the bad car facts idea, okay? So the notion that there's something irreversibly damaged and secondhand about a car that's damaged or scratched has seeped into the watch collector attitudes toward over-polished watches. So unlike tarnish, which can be cleaned off a case, or even dents, which can be laser welded, polishing a watch removes material in order to level the case to a depth below the scratches on the surface. So if you've got sort of a dent into the case or a shallow scratch, you lower the material to the base of the scratch to make the case smooth again. I've seen platinum watches come back measurably lighter from polishing, even by factory workshops that should know better. And these are not patinated or weathered, keep in mind. They are permanently deformed because of the refinishing that's necessary to remove the marks we don't want to see on our erstwhile perfect factory fresh timepieces. Even an eBay seller would struggle to paint an excessively polished watch as charming or patinated. And on eBay, they will try anything to sell you a watch. Honestly, collectors are increasingly strict about demanding two things that are incompatible. They want factory perfect finish, but they also want no polish on watches. And even when they send them in for service, sometimes they're requesting no polish on watches that are visibly scratched or imperfect, and they should. Just as Concours level show cars are increasingly valued not because of their absolute condition, but because of their originality. This was an unrestored Duesenberg SJ at Amelia. But unpolished watches, even if they're imperfect, as long as they have the factory, albeit marred finish, they're actually considered more desirable. So can we somehow reconcile the factory finish with the imperfect watch, so you can truly have both worlds in one with no compromises or excuses? This is where I turn the whole notion of a damaged watch on its head. People hate to polish, but they also hate to put the first scratch on a new watch. I'm starting to think there's a market for factory scratched, scuffed, and dented watches. This is a great example. I bought a Linsky American-made titanium mountain bike frame a few years ago. And I specified this pre-bastardized industrial mill finish they do so that I could just rip with it off-road with no qualms about devastating it in crashes and rubbing it up against trees and roots and all sorts of things that hit your bike when you're on the trail. So they actually thought about this in the bike world on these expensive boutique frames. I feel like there's a place for pre-bastardized elite watches that you can just take out of the box, denude of the stickers, and wear fearlessly. And this is where I'm going to call out one brand that can be our heroes. This seems like the kind of thing that Audemars Piguet would do, both because of the company's self-declared independent streak in doing things differently, and the fact that its signature model is the most traumatically scratched watch in all creation. That first damage on a Royal Oak, I like to say the first scratch on a Royal Oak bezel scratches twice, once on your watch and once on your soul. Audemars Piguet, you can save us from that grief. Here's the thing. You could even charge more for a pre-scratched and dinged and swirled and dented and even partially soiled and burnished watch. You could charge more, because here's why. In order to make it convincingly bashed, you would have to start by applying a full factory standardized finish and then apply the equivalent of 5 to 10 years on the wrist to make it look truly weathered and not simply factory patinated. I'm not talking about what Panerai has been doing with these pre-burnished models. No, that looks too lightly worn clinical and gives me more of a pre-torn Gap jeans vibe than a fearlessly brandished tool worn without apologies or any qualms. No. We need the kind of random and searing marks that real life leaves on a watch, to the point that each piece that comes out of this process should have randomly generated defects applied by hand that look like the ravages of use rather than a standardized industrial process. So AP, you could actually charge a premium because first it has to be perfect and then it has to be made imperfect in a way that is non-generic and non-repetitive. Of course, with newly manufactured jeans or guitars, patina straight out of the factory tends to feel inauthentic, like you're trying too hard. You know what I mean? The reason is that this look is only perceived as cool and laden with character when it takes years to acquire organically. But still, let's look at this in a different frame of mind. If your new $2,000 guitar looks like this, then you're not going to worry about using it as a gig or letting a kid play it or that it might fall. This thing that you're going to protect like a jewel because you're afraid to scratch it suddenly becomes your favorite axe because you're not afraid to scratch it. And it could be exactly the same with watches. We're not doing this because we want them to look pre-worn in a sort of fake poser sense. It's not grandstanding. It's the watch collector liberated from fear, from concern, from any kind of compunction about wearing the watch or enjoying the watch. Think less pre-torn jeans and more like that factory scuffed mountain bike. If you hit a doorknob with a pre-dented and dashed watch, you might not even be able to spot the new mark amid all of the marks that are already there. What could be more liberating? Some people are reluctant to even show their dented and scratched watches to friends at watch events and at the office because they think it'll make them look sloppy or careless. No more. The idea with a brand new weathered watch would be to remove the anxiety of buying new, And it might even discourage flipping if you think about it, to a point since new in box would be indistinguishable from several years old. There'd be no fear of wearing the watch and then selling it a few years down the line. You could enjoy it and sell it more or less the way it looked when it arrived from Le Brassus. For sure, there would be fewer unworn watches sitting in their original packaging and stickers if doing so didn't carry some sort of financial incentive. People keep these boxes and these watches and these stickers intact because they buy the thing and then they chicken out. They let it sit for a few days or a few months or a few years and then they sell it. And if they just didn't have that fear of losing value or equity in the watch, they'd wear the damn thing instead of flipping it. Now, you could sleep easy like Squash with these pre-marked watches, and Squashy does sleep easy, and all the time, and for a long time, and while snoring, and after meals, and before meals, and in the morning, and in the evening, but he gets up at 11 to go to the bathroom. The pre-scratched, pre-dented, pre-weathered watch would be a true liberation day for watch owners. Okay, AP, I am begging you. You are so the ones to do this, and do it right, and do it artisanally, and do it in a way that seems cool, and not forced, and not contrived. Cross that Rubicon. Find a way to randomize the process, and do it by hand to give the result a craft value and real soul, and maybe do it only in titanium or white gold initially to make it special and exclusive. You say you know how to break the rules? Prove it. I'm calling you out. All right. See what's going on in the box. Sashi's saying this is why bronze watches were a big thing a few years ago. And we have Henry West saying this is verging on satire. That's fine. I'm perfectly... Guys. We're talking about expensive man jewelry. It has always been satire. This has always been tongue-in-cheek. Hopefully we've always been laughing at ourselves on this show. And then we have Norm M saying the coin market has dictated how people view the watch market, finish, condition. Coin is tarnished on top of the metal, not scratches like on a watch. In other words, polishing achieves a different thing. Kerry B saying, I'd stay away from a soiled watch. I'm not necessarily talking about soiled, more like an oxide layer. Not like there's dirt on the watch, more like something that, you might find on 316 steel after a few years of playing in the ocean. What else is going on? Darius B saying, Tim, don't give them ideas because they will do it. And what's even worse, someone will buy it. We have Norm M saying bronze plus polydent equals yellow gold. And what else is happening? Jeff S saying, I'm still reeling from you calling out Michel Parmigiani as a bullshitter. I wouldn't say that, but if he's claiming he prefers pin buckles on watches because it makes it easier for his client to see the movement, you have to realize how much time clients spend pulling the strap out of the buckle. It's not hard, it's not time consuming, and I'd much rather have the buckle. What else is going on here? Now, if this were some excuse for putting a pin buckle on a bracelet watch, maybe I would agree, but on the strap, it's not that big of an encumbrance. Okay, Carlos joining from Puerto Rico. Here again, thanks for the knowledge. And Slow Boy Fuel Pump, who among us hasn't soiled their watch? That's true. By the way, guys, if you're not within the cultural and economic orbit of the United States, that polished head you saw before belongs to Mr. Clean, who is the mascot of a household cleaning product here in the United States. He in turn inspired the immortal Mr. Sparkle, Simpsons, please don't sue me, who in turn inspired the sublime but obscure Fruity Oaty Bar commercial from Firefly. And if you recognize this, you're the man. Okay. And there are 2, maybe 3 people in this live chat right now who recognize that reference. Not mandatory. Okay, viewers chats number 3. Mark of the UK visits the Lake District with family. And the Rolex Explorer 2 Polar, looking good on a strap. Different look, I like it. Jordan S. of Canada forwards a his and hers double of Longines Moonphase complications. Eduardo R. returns to Japan with the extraordinary SBGW 317 manual wind in 44 GS case. G Mood captures the Mito Ocean Star GMT with Tom Ford Oud Wood Cologne. And Anonymous lights up his Rolex Explorer 2 Polar with Rolex Chromolite Lume. Send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at either the 1916company.com if you like contemporary, or the watchbox.com if you prefer vintage. Now, fine finish, guys. We're changing the topic a little. You will never have seen this on YouTube. I guarantee it. I've often been asked about watch finish. For newcomers to the hobby or collectors moving for the first time to a higher price point, the qualitative distinctions between different levels of finish can seem extremely vexing. Aside from the difficulty of actually getting firsthand and observing a wide variety of exotic watches, many of the decorations in question are so small to the naked eye that it fails to perceive the distinction between $10,000, $100,000, and $1 million watches. This isn't a matter of tech specs or metrics, it's simply a matter of being able to see the thing and having the opportunity. Truthfully, it's the kind of thing you need to show to a person rather than explain with words, so I'm going to show you right here, based on my experience and pictures I've taken. This isn't the full dress movement finishing show I have planned, but it is a start. A part of my publication series with Quill and Pad is that I've taken thousands of detail photos of watches that I will never get to use because most of these photos are surplus to what can actually be published with an article on a web platform. There just isn't space and there are editorial constraints. But I can start sharing all of this extra stuff never before seen today. Let's go big time and start with Philippe Dufour and the Simplicity. That is a first series Simplicity, albeit, one version of it. There are several different dials and case metals and sizes. Okay, let's go full screen now. Black polish and inward creased bevels. The regulator cap, or I should say the escape wheel cap right there, is black polished. It is a steel finish that is bright from only one angle and appears black from every other. Doing it right is very challenging. Inward bevels. Do you see where there are creases where the polished edges meet on the edge of the train bridge and the edge of the escape wheel cock? Getting that inward crease on a surface that is both rounded and mirrored, when it is that sharp, that requires hand-eye experience and time. It is what you pay for when you pay for a watch of this stature. Outward points. We don't talk about them enough, but the devil's horns over the center wheel are a hallmark of Philippe Dufour movement finish because drawing metal out to be that sharp at its tip is more difficult than an inward angle, particularly because it is such a delicate edge that becomes fragile the pointier it gets. Engraving. Here, on a surface narrower than a tic-tac, you make a mistake on that piece of solid gold on the last letter, and you start again. This demonstrates extraordinary skill and experience. Côte de Genève. The best waves appear to have depth, a shading gradient from side to side when they're viewed. They appear to have an action in the light that suggests motion, and you can really see that three-dimensional quality as though there is depth and motion and shading. Those are the best Geneva waves, and this is what they look like. Grand Seiko SBGZ 003, a product of the Micro Artist Studio in Shiojiri, Nagano, Japan. This is the best that Japan has to offer. Not saying that there aren't others equal to it, but from the world of Seiko Epson, it doesn't get any better. The movement gets better as you get closer. I would say the details surpass the bland architecture of broad brushed bridges, which have little surface detail, but get closer and elaborate bevels are broad, mirrored, visibly rounded, and tied to Valet du Jeu influences like Philippe Dufour himself. Thick bridges and a slow process make it possible. Only a few dozen per year issue from this workshop. Broad bevels also grace the barrel cover, which is in steel. Note the bellflower motif because it is the local symbol of the Micro Artist Studio, the Shinshu watch studio, that makes these. Inward angles are mandatory at this level, but not all are created equal. The deeper the crease, the better. But there remains room for criticism even here, and I have to communicate this as well. This corner and crease between the two pivots, I gotta be perfectly honest, it would have been better if they'd conformed to appear as parted halves of the same whole. The corner should have appeared to have been drawn apart from the inner angle like a jigsaw puzzle or tectonic plates for maximum effect. But finish is not just about movement. These diamond cut and mirror polished faceted hands and indices speak to the incredible dexterity and precision of those who focus on making these pieces and only these pieces all day long. But machines were here too, and not for the worse, but you can see the dial is clearly engraved by an automated process. The micro hand engraving of Dufour is the better to Grand Seiko's good, even if it is less surgical in its execution. Roger W. Smith, Series 4. These are all things I photographed firsthand, and now you'll see what I see. Here's an example of something you can buy and want to wait for, because it looks craft built but not perfect. Unlike Dufour or Grand Seiko, Smith strives almost solely to duplicate the tropes of his master, George Daniels, and the degree of perfection or imperfection inherent in 18th century British watchmaking. The dial is a cornerstone of any Smith watch, and here you could see that idiosyncratic and beautiful individuality of the watch begins. Every feature of this dial, for better or worse, exists as it does because Roger Smith intended it to be so. There are no accidents or default designs here. The imperfection is a result of the process and the inspirations. The orbital date, which sits in a sort of trench around the periphery of the dial, is there for a purpose. It prevents the triple calendar display from obscuring any other feature of the time or calendar. Even cases are made manually at Roger Smith. There you can see Roger Smith Workshop. It has been made in Britain. It is 18 karat. The hallmarks do not appear on any Swiss-made case. The cat means assayed in London, the X means 2022, and then the little symbol next to that is the Queen's 70th Jubilee. These are marks you will not find on a German or Swiss watch. This is not a modern Swiss caliber. In fact, it's not modern at all. I feel maybe we skipped a step right there. But this is not a modern Swiss caliber. Do we have the wide shot, guys, of the movement? Bump, 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 bump. There it is. Okay. So note the complete absence of beveled bridges and the frosted rather than striped bridge tops, and the enormous hand-engraved ratchet and crown wheel cover. All of this is heritage determined, a choice made. It's not an omission. Note the Triskelion at right, which symbolizes the Isle of Man where this is fabricated. The hand engraving is not clinically perfect because of all the work done in-house by hand by a small group of artisans who undertake every part of the fabrication. There's likely no space for a full-time engraver at Roger Smith. Someone who can't fabricate bridges, plates, escapements, wheels, pivots, screws, and trains probably doesn't work there. So this is not as perfect as if, say, I don't know, Hannelore Lass were making this. But only elements related to the regulator feature a modern style refinement on the Smith watch, including mirror polish and rounded bevels. Look at that stud holder. This is your key that something special is happening here. Gold escapement bridge with black polish on top and rounded bevels is your next clue. And look at those huge blued and domed Bombay screws. The coaxial escapement is the reason for this grandeur. Daniel's magnum opus, and you'll never get closer than here. This is the best view you will ever get of that thing. The crenellated towers are one impulse surface on top of the larger diameter wheel, with the outward stretched arms below being the other. Two impulse surfaces coaxial, one inboard of the other. So you can see the two impulse surfaces that work against the impulse jewels on the roller table. Both interact for direct and indirect impulse, only with tangential, not sliding friction. That wheel is what a coaxial impulsing wheel looks like. Viewer is shots number 4. Assad and son visited Japan's Grand Seiko Museum in Tokyo with Seiko GMT and some Brand X watch. Rob V seizes the moment with his Rolex Oyster Perpetual at Zion National Park. Jeremy L. from Alabama joins us with local flora and the Tag Heuer Monaco Burgundy. Kerry B takes his Oris Aquis date with tungsten bezel to the beach in Northeast Florida. Kwong Di of Sydney, Australia, shares a rarely seen Le Bois & Co. chrono given as an anniversary gift by his fiancée, or I should say an engagement gift. Many anniversaries to come, please. Frank R. takes us home with the JLC Master Compressor, Diving GMT, and in the background, autographed Il Dottore. You know who he is. Guys, Send your shouts to mondaymailbag at the1916company.com to see your pieces on these pixels. Thanks to one and all who joined us. This has been an epic. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate my intrepid crew on the back who got the images up in real time. It was a complicated show. Until next time, time out.